Just imagine this, a civilization that built cities to rival those in ancient Europe, that mastered astronomy with breathtaking precision, and developed one of the most complex writing systems of the ancient world. And then, in the heart of their empire, the great stone cities just fell silent, swallowed up by the jungle.
For centuries, this has been one of history's greatest puzzles. You know the story, a lost civilization that just vanished into thin air. But is that what really went down? Well, let's get into it and separate the myth from the incredible reality.
First off, we just have to appreciate the sheer scale of what they accomplished. I mean, we're talking about a civilization that, at its peak, supported huge populations in these sprawling cities, all without the wheel, without metal tools, or even draft animals. Their intellectual legacy is, frankly, staggering. And right away, let's just clear up the biggest misconception of all. The Maya did not disappear. Their civilization didn't just vanish, it transformed. So this isn't a story about extinction. It's a story of profound change and, honestly, of incredible resilience.
Okay, so let's start with what actually happened. What we're really investigating here is the collapse of a political and an urban system. And it happened specifically in one major region of the vast Maya world.
The core of this mystery is all focused right here, in the southern lowlands, what we now know as Guatemala and Honduras. These great dynastic centers, the absolute hearts of royal power, saw their populations just plummet. Kings stopped putting up monuments, and their palaces started to crumble. And you know what? Modern science completely backs this up. A pretty recent genetic study of ancient remains from the city of Copan found a direct, unbroken genetic line to the Maya people who are alive today. So here's the critical takeaway. The people survived even as their great cities emptied out. So when you hear historians and archaeologists talk about the Maya collapse, this is exactly what they mean. It was a regional political breakdown, not some mysterious vanishing act of an entire people. So how in the world do we know what pushed these incredible cities over the edge? Well, the clues aren't just in the ruins anymore. They're hidden deep inside caves, at the bottom of lakes, and even in ancient DNA. Let's check out the toolkit. You really have to think of today's scientists as historical detectives. With these incredible tools, they can piece together a story that was just impossible to tell even a few decades ago. They're revealing secrets that were locked away for 1,000 years in DNA, in stone, and even in mud. Now, what's really wild is that these tools let us build this vivid, almost year-by-year picture of the pressures the Maya were up against. It's like we've got a complete forensic report on a crisis that's over a millennium old. And that forensic report? It points to one primary suspect that really set the stage for everything that came next: catastrophic climate change. So the smoking gun actually comes from deep inside caves. As water drips down and forms stalagmites, it traps these tiny chemical signatures of the climate outside. Each layer that forms is like a page in a weather diary that goes back thousands of years. And that diary reveals something absolutely shocking. Around the year 929, the region got slammed by a drought that lasted for 13 consecutive years. And specifically, it was the wet seasons that failed 13 times in a row. For a civilization that depended completely on rain for their crops, this was just unimaginable. Just think about what that actually means. 13 failed harvests back to back. We're talking about widespread famine. We're talking about mass migration. It is the complete breakdown of the entire system that feeds your people. And crucially, this climate data solved another major puzzle. The analysis shows the droughts were way more intense in the south, which is the exact region where the great cities collapsed. The north, where Maya culture would later rise again, was hit, but not nearly as hard. But here's the thing. Drought alone doesn't usually bring down a civilization this complex. It was more like an accelerant. It poured gasoline on the social and political fires that were already burning, and that led to this terrifying spiral of violence. The evidence for this is just chilling. In a later city, Mayapan, archaeologists have uncovered mass graves. They're filled with skeletons that show signs of horrific violence. I mean, bodies left with knives still stuck in their rib cages. And when they dated these remains, they lined up perfectly with a period of intense drought. This is what experts call a lethal risk spiral. When all the traditional ways of coping fail, when the rains don't come and the food stores are empty, the very fabric of society can just tear apart. hardship gets political fast, and your rivals start to see an opportunity. You see, the Maya city-states were already in this constant state of competition, but as resources got more and more scarce, this normal level of warfare likely escalated to a breaking point, completely destabilizing the whole region. So, when you put all the pieces together, it becomes really clear there is no one single answer here. The story of the classic Maya collapse is the story of a perfect storm. And this is so important to remember. The Maya were not a fragile society. Not at all. They had survived major droughts before. They developed these incredibly sophisticated farming techniques, like the milpa cycle, where they basically turned the jungle itself into a massive, managed garden that could support huge populations. But the droughts of the terminal classic period, they were just on another level. All of their time-tested strategies for being resilient were pushed way beyond their limits. The whole system was simply overwhelmed. It was a cascade of failures, one thing leading to the next. Severe droughts led to famine, which then fueled intense warfare. You combine that with deforestation and soil exhaustion, and you get disrupted trade networks and the shattering of political authority. It was a total systemic collapse, but just in the South. But this collapse, as catastrophic as it was, wasn't the end of the story. It was a transformation. Let's look at the final, crucial piece of the puzzle. As those southern cities fell into decline, the centers of power and the populations themselves shifted north to places like the famous Chichen Itza. The old idea of a centralized kingdom ruled by a divine king started to fade away, and it was replaced by a more decentralized network of states that continued to thrive for centuries. As some of the leading scholars on this put it, the modern scientific view replaces that old romantic search for a secret cause with a much more complex and a much more accurate history of adaptation and change. So the Maya didn't vanish. They adapted, they survived, but their story serves as this incredibly powerful warning from history. It's a story of how even a brilliant, resilient civilization can be brought to its knees when environmental, political, and social pressures all collide at once. And it leaves us with one final, pretty crucial question to think about.